Greetings, computer science enthusiasts. Today we're going to be looking at lesson plan 3.7, where we're going to create a variable, and then we're going to update that variable within our program. We're also going to do a little bit of stuff with graphics, where we can get our updated variable to display on the stage, on the screen. All right, so what I did to start out is I just clicked on that link, and it took me to this little starter file right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to View Code. So if you go up here to View Code and click View Code, it takes you to the code section. And then remember, you're going to have to remix this to make it your own. So once you remix it, you can then rename it if you want to and do all sorts of stuff with it to personalize it. To start out with, I'm going to make a little bit of modification to this starter code right here. When I was practicing with this earlier, I was having some problems with the clicks being recorded more than once for just one click. So the fix to that is down here in this statement right here. So if you look at this statement right here, what we're going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and pull that out, and I'm going to turn this into compound conditional. You don't have to really know what I'm doing at this point. You can just copy, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to do mouse pressed over Sprite for the first part of the if statement. And then the second part of the if statement, I'm going to pull this little exclamation point equal sign thing over here. And then in that, I'm going to put the world seconds in the first box. So I think world seconds is right here. And then I'll just put the letter T in the second box. So I think if you make that modification, that's going to eliminate problems with multiple clicks being recorded when you're working with your Sprite. And you'll see what I mean later. So the first thing we need to do is, this program's a little bit ugly because it doesn't have any comments in it. So I want to go ahead and add a few comments to start out with, and then we'll throw in our own comments as we get ready to add our own code as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to variables, and on variables, I'm going to drag a comment box in here. And this comment box is just basically going to say this creates Sprite. So that's where I created the Sprite. So let's talk a little bit about this Sprite that gets created. So if you go over here, you notice that this is Alien Badge 1. And if you click animation, you'll notice that Alien Badge 1 actually is the Sprite that has some animation attached to it. And that animation is based off of these two images. And it looks like it's just switching back and forth between these two images. So you can, if you want to do some stuff with it, you could like go into this image and you could change some of the background on it to make it look different. Or you could change the background on this one to make it look different. I'm not going to go through any of that. Basically, it's just, it kind of works like Paint. It's just using these tooltips and modifying stuff and changing the pixels over here. I'll let you guys play around with that on your own. So if we go back to the code, the alien green badge 1 is that little alien that flips back and forth, back and forth. This create Sprite 200 is what puts it in the screen. So if I click run, you're going to see this little Sprite right here in the screen. Okay, now why is it not doing anything? Well, because when I draw it, the first thing I do is I say, hey, let's pause it. And so I've set this variable up called T, and T basically is representing the time. And when the time is equal to the world seconds as listed here, it pauses the Sprite, which pauses the incrementation of world seconds. And so the Sprite gets paused until I click it and my world seconds don't match up exactly with T. So when I click it, now it's going to start doing its animation. And because it has T plus 5 here, that means it's going to do the animation for 5 cycles and then it'll stop again. And so if I want to start the animation back up, I have to re-click. So that's what's governing that animation right there. And that's why that's working. And that's really all there is about. Oh, the other thing about the Sprite that's really interesting is if you want to, you could move it. If you didn't like it in the center of the screen, I could put it closer to the left side. and closer to the top by changing the coordinates from 200, 200 to 100, 100. And now when I put it up there, there's the sprite. All right, I'm going to reset it back to where it was, though, because I kind of liked it in the middle. But, you know, your students might want to experiment with putting it where they want to, or modifying the background. That's just something you can let them play with. All right, the real intent of this lesson isn't really to focus so much on what you can do with the sprite and where you can put it. Really what we're trying to highlight here is creating a variable and writing a program that actually updates that variable in some meaningful way. So what I want to do is I want to be able to record and display how many times I click the sprite. I want to keep a running track of while this program is running, how many times did I actually click the sprite and make the animation go. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and throw a comment in here called variable creation, or create the variables. And then I'm going to create a second variable. I'm going to create a variable called click times. So what I want to do is I want to take this little variable thing right over here, the one that allows me to declare and initialize a variable, and my variable is going to be click times, and I'm going to initialize that variable to 0. Now, what I want it to do is every time I actually click the sprite, I want that number to go up by 1. So I'm going to update or change or modify the variable as the program runs based on what I do in the program while it's running. So now the variable has already been declared. If I want to overwrite the value that's currently in there, I don't have to take the var whatever equals. I just take the equals. And I'll put this down here right after I update the time, the t, and of course my variable name is called click times. And here I'm using camel case notation. You've seen in some videos where I use the underscore between two words. Camel case is basically you start out the first word is lowercase, and then every new word you put in, you don't put a space in between them. You just capitalize the next word. All right, so I want click times to go up by a value of 1. That means I want to take whatever's currently in click times and add 1 to it. So that's where the math stuff comes in. You want to go and you want to grab an addition operator, and then you want to say, hey, I'm taking the value in my variable click times and I'm adding 1 to it. Now this kind of is difficult for people to understand when they first start doing it, because you've got click times equal click times, and that seems really silly because in algebra, x never equals x plus 1. That's a false statement. What you got to remember is the equal sign in this computer language doesn't mean equals to. What it means is an assignment. And the assignment always takes the stuff on the right and does everything that you can do on the right, and then gets a final thing and assigns that final thing to the left. So whatever is currently in click times, I'm going to add 1 to it. And then when I get that answer, I'm going to put that into click times, which will overwrite the previous number in there. So if the number in click times is 4, I'm going to say, okay, I pull 4 out of click times. I add 1 to it. 4 plus 1 is 5. I put the 5 back into click times. So that's how incrementation will work in this format. So we've updated click times when I click the variable, but how am I going to know if that actually happens? Because if I just run this, I won't. So what I need to do is I need to figure out a way to output this thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to console log, and then I'm going to say, let's just display click times. All right, so that means I'm going to need to be able to see my console log. So I'm going to drag it up a little bit so I can see the console log. And you know what? Since I put some code in here, let's throw in a comment. So this is updating click times based on number of sprite clicks. All right, because it's always good to comment your programming. All right. So now I've created something that when I click on the sprite, it's going to record that and put it to the console. So let's go ahead and see if that works. I'm going to reset this program and I'm going to run it again. And now when I go up here and click, not only does it do the animation, but you see that it records the number of click times. And I must have held the button down too long or accidentally double clicked, because it got two records of that in there. So you got to be careful about that. Let's go ahead and reset that and run that again. Make sure I only click it once. There we go. So I must have double clicked it just instinctively the last time. This code right here keeps those single clicks from being read more than once. That's why I added this statement, world seconds not equal to t. All right. So great. I've recorded the number of click times. What I really would like to be able to do now is, instead of displaying that to the console, which generally users never see your console, instead of displaying that to the console, I want to display that to the stage up here. All right, so how do I do that? Well, if you remember back when we were doing drawings, there's several different ways to draw stuff to the stage. And one of the things you can draw is a variable. And you can do that based in text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab this text string. And also, I'm not sure what color the text string is. So I think I'm going to make sure that the font or the text fills in with a black. All right, so instead of putting text in, what I want to do is I want to put in the variable click times. Well, maybe I'll put in some text. I tell you what, let's go back to the math section. Let's grab this little plus operation thing, and I'm going to put the words clicks, colon, and then a space, and then it'll display the number of clicks. So for the clicks, colon, I need to put that in quotes, and notice I'm leaving a space in between the colon and the close quotes so that there'll be a space displayed in between that word and then the number. And then I'm going to combine that with click times. And remember, that's called concatenation when you have a string and something else, and you're just putting them together. I'm not really performing a mathematical operation of addition here. I'm just adding two separate strings to make a big long string. And then I want that to appear in the upper right-hand corner. So I'll go over quite a bit. Let's go over about 325, and then let's go down. I want to be able to see it. So let's go down 25. All right, so now when I reset and run this program and I click on this, it records the number of times I clicked right up here. Notice this and the console are the same. That's because I'm using the same variable for that number and for that number. And if I click again, and if I click again, well, the console's clearly saying a 3, but up here, this stuff is getting a little blurry. And the reason is, when I write that picture of a text, I'm writing it over the top of the text that's already there. So the first one was really clear because there was nothing overwritten. The second one becomes a little bit more dysfunctional, and by the time I've done 10 clicks, here's 5, let's do some more. And then when I do the 10th click, you'll see the 0 on the side that displays. So, but this 1 is really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all written over each other. And you notice the clicks is becoming darker and darker and a little bit distorted too. How can I fix that? So remember, as I go through this section, every time this occurs, it takes this and writes it on the stage. So what if right before I write it onto the stage, I put a white background rectangle on the stage? So it will cover up what's currently there. And if nothing's there, no big deal. It just covers up whatever's there. And then it writes the text on top of that white rectangle. So basically, by putting a white rectangle over what's already there, I'm kind of erasing it. And then after I erase it, I can put in the new text. So how would we do that? Well, that's pretty easy. When, if you remember back to the lesson we had on shapes, all I have to do is do a background color and a fill color that are going to be white. And it doesn't matter what order you put that in. And then I'm going to do a rectangle. Now my rectangle has to be over as far as the text, so that's 325. I'll start my rectangle there. The rectangle probably doesn't want to go down as far on the y coordinate as my text did. I kind of want my text to be inside the rectangle, so maybe I'll make it go down 10. My rectangle needs to be long enough that all the text will fit in it. So let's just be safe and make it 60. And then the height of my rectangle is need to be more than the font. I think I'm going to start out with 30 and see how that looks. All right, so now when I go ahead and reset and run and I click, now, I drew this white. Oh, that's because I made the background white. It shouldn't have been the background. It should have been the stroke color. So I'll put in stroke and I'll take out background. And I don't want the stroke to be blue. I want it to be white. So now we've got stroke is white. So I'll reset and run. And I'll click. And now we see clicks 1. And I'll let the animation finish before I click again. Then I'll click again. And now we see clicks 2. And the 2 isn't being written over the 1. It's being written over that white rectangle that just got put. So there's a white rectangle between each display of the text. And so you're going to be able to see the text completely clearly now, as opposed to all blurry like it was before. All right, so that wraps up our lesson on how to put in a variable. You might want to go ahead and put in comments to say what you did here with these 3 lines of code, and then put a comment in saying that this is what this does. But other than that, after commenting, this is pretty much done. So we have successfully written a program that created a variable, updated a variable, and then we were even able to display that variable to the screen. So I would call that a success. So keep on computing and keep on creating.